Alright guys, that's Kremp again today. I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Big rumours emerging as to what the salaries are going to look like for the upcoming season. Over the last few years, there's been all this talk that the salaries are going down in some areas and going up in some others. Methodz reveals that as far as he is aware, this season, more pay cuts are on the horizon. Is this not exactly what Shotzzy said at the start of the season? Many of these players, if they don't look to build a brand and do other things to try and help their own prospects in the Call of Duty League, their salaries will only keep on going down. That seems to be a continuation over the coming season. Will it affect any of the top teams as well? Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Plenty to get into today. Just quickly on this day, or yesterday, 10 years ago, OpTic won UMG Washington DC. Now, this is pretty remarkable because that was their 8th tournament win of the year, and out of those tournaments, pretty much, Scump had a 1.2 KD or more in basically all of them. I mean, he had 8 events that season with a 1.2 or more, even at this point. I don't think all of them were ones that he won, but they had won all of those at that point. And yeah, pretty crazy. Of course, 3 of those wins came at the start of the year with nade shots before he went on his hiatus, from which he never returned. And Karma came in instead, and Nabel played a couple of the events they did in Europe before Karma got his visa and all that type of stuff sorted. But yeah, remarkable to look back on. We did discuss earlier today event locations for the upcoming season, just to think that, you know, 10 years ago we had 14, 15 events in a season. Today we have less than half of that. Something for the league to think about, I would say, going forward. Now, speaking of, I mean, we just saw their Detroit uplink getting played, the final map of the tournament. Ghosty was talking about his best ever maps, or his favourite maps in the Call of Duty League. Now, if we go pre-CDL, I don't know how many CDL maps even make the conversation. Of course, Raid was in the CDL, but it was not an original map, so we're not going to count that. Just maps that have been in the CDL over the last 6 or so years. What do we think? I actually think Ghosty's list is pretty good. I'll share it, then we'll talk about it.
Top 5 CDL original maps. Rio, 6-star, Moscow, and fucking Hotel. What else? MW19 had 0 good maps. Cold War had just Moscow. I mean, you might be able to say Tuscan, bro. You might be able to say Tuscan.
I think his assessment that Modern Warfare 19 had no good maps is probably about right. I think you could maybe consider throwing Gunrunner in there, but I don't think it's top 5 in the CDL, so I probably would say nothing for Modern Warfare 19. Cold War, you guys know that I'm not as big of a fan of Moscow as others are. I think it was fine, but I still don't really put it... It was probably the best map in their game. I did see some replies to this tweet talking about Checkmate. If you guys remember Checkmate from that game, it was played in Control, Search and Destroy, and Hardpoint as well. It's the one with the big plane in the middle. And it was actually a pretty good map. It wasn't great at all. I don't think it was considered to be top level, but I think there is an argument to be made that Checkmate might have been the best competitive map in that game, of course, apart from Raid. So maybe you could sneak Checkmate into the top 5. I'm not going to begrudge Ghosty from putting Moscow in there, but I think some of the better maps have come in the last few years. Some people debate about whether Tuscan was really that good, or was it just the best map in a terrible game. I think I would probably put Tuscan top 5. People would also say Bocage, maybe from that game, was pretty good. And yeah, Bocage was solid. Was it Tuscan? Not in my opinion. Modern Warfare 2, probably it is Hotel. I mean, wow, we had a few bad years, didn't we? We really did, thinking through these games. Like, if these were the best maps we had, it was a rough time. And I think he's right to say that, yeah, we didn't play Rio and 6-star the whole year last time. Vista as well. Probably itself isn't even too far away from the conversation, but certainly Rio and 6-star have to be right up there. Original maps that came in around halfway through Modern Warfare 3. And then the most recent game, Black Ops 6, anything that turns heads, probably not, right? So, you know, we're certainly hoping that Black Ops 7 is going to, let's say, turn a corner in that sense going forwards. Time will tell. Ghosty's new teammate for the upcoming season may well, we think, be Dylan Envoy over at Gentlemates. Brian Stat says, after this last year, Envoy has now won a major championship with 13 different players, which is tied for number 10 in COD history. So Scump has won with 21 different teammates, from the early days on Quantic Leverage with Aches to, of course, well, his final event event win with Illy and Shotzzy and Dashy on OpTic Texas, of course, playing with numerous OpTic iterations over the years. Kremp with 18, Clay with 18, Slasher with 18, Ake 17, Cap, Priester, John, Formal, and then Envoy and Kenny tied for 13. Now, Envoy will team with Ghosty, we think, Neptune and Sib. Two of those, of course, he's not played with before. Kenny has not played with aBeZy, Scrap or HyDra. So theoretically, if those guys win events, then Kenny could potentially move up this list a little bit further than we have seen. But let's talk about salaries and what that looks like, because we know that Gentlemates have some money to offer. They've come into the league, they've got some decent cash behind them. They were pretty close to pulling off the heist for Scrap and HyDra last off-season and bringing them to the Gentlemates. That didn't happen in the end. They went to Thieves, as we know, and Cellium, though, is, we think, getting a serious bag. You know, maybe it's not 700k, but it's something not far off that number as far as I'm aware, over to the Falcons. Of course, Paris Legion were not throwing that money around. Vegas Legion were not throwing that money around. Vegas Falcons most certainly are. So in some sense, there's teams like Falcons that are coming in with paychecks. We also know that there were rumours, this was, you know, tongue-in-cheek by the way here, from Zuma, as far as I'm aware anyway, but there was talk about Alcatia Esports, about Twisted Minds, a couple of Saudi Arabian organisations maybe looking to come in, and I think there might well be some interest there, but the CDL has to choose what they're going to do, and if they're going to allow a sale of a spot, they, you know, probably in the best interest of the league right now to say if we are going to have more Saudi teams, that could come slightly further down the line, because there is currently a big discrepancy between the teams at the top with serious money to spend, such as the Falcons, and the teams further down that are pretty much putting their guys on the minimum salary. They're collecting their cut of the YouTube rights deal, they're collecting their cut of the skin sales, and they're saying, well, we didn't lose any money, so that was a good year, right? And that's pretty much the way that some of these teams are looking at it. That may change this upcoming year, especially if there's no YouTube deal. We'll see if that comes through, but that's been a discussion as of late. Bottom line is, some teams and some players are still getting paid handsomely, others are in the trenches. Now, the last couple of years, there has been talk about what the kind of average salary looks like. I don't really know the numbers on this, but I would say it's been about maybe the $120,000 mark. A lot of players are on, you know, near enough the minimum. I mean, I don't really know if the minimum really exists anymore, but obviously there's state minimums and stuff. Pretty much 50k, 55k is considered to be the salary of the lowest players. The highest paid players historically, you've tended to think 350, 400,000 maybe. Don't know what Shotzy's on. Cellium might be on a boatload more than that. Pred's probably in a similar ballpark as well. Now, yeah, the OpTic guys are going to get rewarded handsomely, and they've got other ways to make good money as well. Shotzy's stream is not a small payday, as we know from leaks from Twitch streamers and all this stuff in recent time, with the CPMs as high as they are on that platform. Maybe that won't last forever, time will tell, but as Shotzzy says, players are getting pay cuts every year. Back in January, tweeted this, and they wonder why. Clowns, most of you guys don't do anything besides collecting a check. So Shotzzy made this point very clear that, in his opinion, the players, you know, they're not making decisions in the best interest of the game. I think that's number one. I think Shotzzy is highly commendable how much, when he considers things like gentlemen's agreements, yes, he has the perspective of a player in terms of sniper rifles and these other things, what the player perspective would be, but also Shotzzy recognises that having an entertaining game for the fans is particularly important in the future of the league. And Shotzzy also recognises that pro players who do not play Money 8s, they do not stream any chals, anything to this effect, has a serious negative consequence on their own potential, not only the future of the league, but the ability of those guys to cash in when they can, and also to keep their spot, because the more valuable you become as a player, the more valuable you become to an organisation. Guess what? The more money you earn. Wow, what an absolute shocker that is. So Shotzzy made this point at the start of the year, and now we're getting into a time where the conversations are continuing. Now, OpTic last year, having won the World Championship, we believe they were asked to take a pay cut to a certain extent. This is not an uncommon thing. Team gets formed, they pay big salaries to get formed, team does well, owner then says to the guys, looking pretty bad in terms of money right now, so if you guys want to still play together, you're going to probably have to take a pay cut to support that. And the players generally will be like, well, you know what, we'll make that up in terms of prize money. It is what it is. And the salaries in COD is kind of remarkable because, you know, it was a decade ago that Complexity were the best team in the game bar none, and they were getting paid $500 a month each on Complexity, right? Like, that was a different world. And then the salaries went from 500 dollars a month was the highest anyone was getting paid, to 1,000 a month, 3,000 a month, 5,000 a month. Then in the pre-franchise 2019, there were some players getting paid 20k a month in that ballpark. Franchising came around, the numbers went even higher. And on some level, that's continued to go up for some organizations, but for others, I think certainly the average salary in this league has gone down over the last few years. And that's what Zinni doubles down on. He says that based on conversations he has had, the kind of offers organizations are throwing around this season, with some exceptions, are more limited than they have previously been.
They're going to see, can they do what Shotzzy, Formal, Huke, Kremp, and others have done? Can they play professional Call of Duty?
I think that with the way some of these orgs are going, I wouldn't be shocked if some of these Halo pros, like Halo pros in general, get bench spots, or if you're a good Halo pro, a starting spot. Because, dude, some of these teams, like I've heard salaries have gone way down, like their offers going out aren't anywhere near what they used to be. Like
For Call of Duty?
Yeah, like at this point, maybe take a chance on someone like I don't even know.
Bound.
Legend. I don't want to say any of our players, but yeah, like those guys are obviously like you're already starting with a huge spotlight. We'll see.
To what extent could this be affecting the top teams? That is an interesting conversation to have. As we've talked about the last couple of days, the nade shot drama that's been happening with what's going on at Thieves. How much money do they have? How much runway do they have? Are they in a position where they have to go to Scrap and HyDra and say, we might need to think about making these numbers work a little bit more, especially if we're going to, pay money to go and buy aBeZy out of his contract and all these other things. So there's some conversations to be had there. Of course, from a player perspective, there is an argument, as of course Drazah made the point. Not sure he made the point publicly, but effectively going to FaZe instead of OpTic. Idea being win more prize money, etc. Now, you go to OpTic, you probably get more viewers on your stream, right? So you're going to make more money that way. But also, as it turned out, OpTic won more prize money than FaZe did anyway over the last couple of seasons. So, there's a question on how well that really aged from the CEO. And also depends who Zinni's talked to here. Has he been talking with Simp or the guys going to FaZe to know kind of what their situation is? Or is it more like orgs like Gentlemates, maybe not offering as much as they were last year? Is it organizations, like Boston obviously are trying to find somebody, Surge are trying to find a full roster, Toronto still have to put the final piece of the puzzle together. So, there's a few organizations out there that probably are looking at the state of things, and there's also been some questions as to what the skin sale kind of relationships look like next year. As I say, to my understanding, the way the skin sales thing works in the CDL is they did pretty well this most recent season. I think they actually sold a boatload of them, but it's not like the money is distributed equally between all of the teams. At least that's I think there's some sort of like baseline. The teams all get paid maybe a certain percentage of the total, and then the top performing teams in skin sales earn more. And you might say that's, a fair mechanism to ensure that the league is competitive from top to bottom and people get their cut of it, as it were. But all it takes is for them to change that and to say, well, you just get paid your share, or for them to change that percentage allocation, if this is even how it works. But I wouldn't be surprised if it is, to my understanding. That then could throw some teams into a difficult spot, right? Because a lot of these organizations are balancing right on the precipice of what is in the black and what is in the red. And if that changes, then things will change. So, as I've said, it is at the end of the day on the organizations. There's only 48 spots in the league. So, on some level, they can charge, they can say what they're going to pay. And if you don't want to play for that amount of money, then tough luck, right? Because somebody in challengers will be willing to do so. That's kind of the nature of things, but equally, if as a player you become more valuable, as Shotzzy said, all of a sudden you're going to be more handsomely rewarded. So just a quick look at the other kind of teams in the league right now and where we might go from here. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Just one final thing, we mentioned the other day that G Fuel, it seemed, were calling it a day. They did that tweet, didn't they, where they said, you know what, we're over, right? It's done and dusted. Clearly they've done a lot over the last few days, but basically they said like, yeah, it's over, thanks for the love, logging out. And then they were like, oh no, we're logging back in. So, we did get caught up a bit in the marketing wave, but as a legendary brand, I thought, you know what, I'll let them get the dub over me this time, and I'll give them another shout out in a video. So very much enjoyed your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.